Hello and welcome back to the True Crime Guys podcast. I'm Lauren.
And I'm Michael.
How's everybody doing? We're back. It's been a little bit of time since we put out a regular free episode in current times. I know you posted something last week during our absence for the freeloaders.
Yeah.
Those of you Patreon members have probably already heard that episode, but nonetheless, we're back.
Yeah, I thought that was a good one to post because, it went along with the Freeway Killer series.
Yeah.
So we went ahead and put out part 4 of the Freeway Killer series, which are very spread out over our catalog. I think some of them are actually in the bulk.
The Freeway Killer series is kind of like a gift that keeps on giving every year. We find another one to do, kind of like the video game series as well.
Yeah,
and the Lotto winners.
And the Lotto winners.
The series that will never end, really.
No.
I just found another video gaming murder that is probably going to be on the next edition, but that will come with time.
Okay.
As for now, Merry Christmas. It's Christmas week.
That's right.
Hope everybody's having a happy holiday, whatever you celebrate.
That's right. Happy holidays, everybody. And we thought we would squeeze this one in. It'll be the last thing I think we do for TCG Productions this week.
Yep. And then we'll see you next year, right? No, actually, we'll probably put out an episode before New Year's.
Yeah, it'll probably be one more at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Maybe
but as for this episode, we're going back to the 70s and in Oregon, into the beautiful woods of Oregon.
Yes, the Pacific Northwest. Has there been any serial killers up there? I can't recall any. No, I'm just kidding.
No.
Nope, none at all.
Definitely lacking in that area.
Yeah, never any killers up there.
No.
Oh, man.
Yeah. This case is kind of well known in the true crime circles, I suppose. Thanks in part to the great Anne Rule and her writing a chapter in one of her books about this case.
Right.
The book called Empty Promises. There was a chapter dedicated to this case. And also there was a Forensic Files episode dedicated to this case as well. Mm-hmm. That would be season 9, episode 10, titled Head Games. That's what this case is based on. And it's got some interesting elements to it. It's also quite creepy to put yourself in the shoes of one of the victims here. Mm-hmm. The other victim didn't really know what was happening until it happened, and I don't feel as bad for him as I do for his wife,
right,
who's suffered ever since. But it's an interesting case. Let's get into it.
Let's do it, man. Young love, but love nonetheless. Just wanted a place to breathe, a place to rest. Two had become one, and their life had just begun. No money, no matter, being together was priority number 1. Nature all around them as their hearts raced, full of trust, although misplaced, unaware of the trials that they were doomed to face. How could one fathom such sudden interruption, one that fills you with sadness to the point of eruption? 1 life, 2 life, 3 lives ruined, like trying to breathe with lungs full of fluid. The truth is unbelievable. Just to survive, you make up a story, knowing it's a lie. Too weak to scream, too scared to cry. Now your salvation rests with the villain, a true antagonist with no hero to kill him. Join him or die, he says with a smile. You feel helpless like an orphan child, left to the wolves out here in the wild. It's over now, and you feel unclean, unable to cleanse your mind of the things you've seen. The truth bubbles up like an active spring. Oh, how you wish it was all just a bad dream. Or just a story on your TV screen. One you could shut off and go on with your life, but it follows you everywhere like the tail of a kite. Fluttering behind you at the mercy of the wind. You ask what if, but it changes nothing in the end.
All right, for our case this week, like I said, we're going back to the 70s in Oregon, and we're going to start out with a young married couple. The female being very young, almost like too young, in my opinion.
Yeah. 16,
right? How do you feel about it? Your daughter's close to this age. How would you feel about her marrying a 20-year-old?
I don't feel too good about it. I don't feel too good about it at all. And even in 19, what was this, the 70s, right? Even in the 70s still. But I think her religious parents had a lot to do with pushing this marriage a little early. Yeah. I think they realized that their daughter was on the brink of a physical relationship, and they thought, oh, well, we'll feel better about it if you're married. So let's go ahead and get this going. Yeah. So I know that played heavily into it.
Yeah, so we'll start out with Jose Julio Torres, who was born in Ensenada, Baja California on July 30th, 1955, and shares a birthday with Bud Selig, Lawrence Fishburne, and Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Well, what a crew.
Bud Selig, a baseball guy, right? I'm not a big baseball
He is the
person.
commissioner of baseball, yes.
Is he still, or was he?
He still is, unfortunately. We need.
What is he, like 90? Because I feel like that's even like an old guy name.
He is definitely holding baseball back, in my opinion. I feel like we need a fresh face in there. We need,
As
somebody.
an outsider, I agree. It just seems like such an antiquated old man sport.
Yeah,
that,
who
like,
cares?
Young people have no interest in watching. We're just like, what are they doing? Are they still doing that? Huh? Cool. You guys still keeping score with pencils and shit in the stands? Like, what's going on here?
They're still doing it.
FM transmitter, listening to the radio call of it.
Right. Yeah, unless you're in Houston, I guess nobody really gives a shit. I guess Philly made a run for the World Series this year, and they got pretty into it. Yeah. You know how Philly fans are, so they kind of. I'm sure baseball was pretty prominent there, but Houston. Say what?
I was calling them fair weather fans. I know they're not. In Philly, they're pretty hardcore fans of all their teams.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just maybe a bit of a hater because I'm the biggest competition for the Eagles this year as a Niner fan.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's just, and I have a coworker that's a big Philly fan, and he's just been obnoxious. And I'm just hoping somehow we can take them out in the playoffs. It just
you got to, right?
Especially with Mr. Irrelevant, that would just be too good. That'd be too juicy.
Exactly. Your work day is going to get rough.
That's right. I told him he can't show his face anymore if he loses to Brock Purdy in the playoffs.
Right on.
Anyways, good old Arnold too. I mean, he's one of the biggest celebrities ever, really.
Yeah. You have to
Talk
put
about
Arnold
a true
on
American story. Like coming as an immigrant from another country and then becoming like one of the biggest stars in the world.
Yeah, no doubt. His success story is crazy.
It really
no
is.
doubt. And then
just
to
hard
politician,
work, dude. Just pure hard work and determination.
Yeah,
the guy, you could barely understand him, and he became one of the biggest movie stars in the
I know,
world.
right? He just played himself in every movie.
Yeah.
I mean, so does The Rock, and he's doing the same thing. It's like if you're big enough,
it pays to do a lot of steroids and be enormous, right?
It does. So. That's what I'm saying.
Get you a lot of roles in film.
Exactly. There's always a role for a guy who has a superhero build. I mean, you gotta know that. So
very true. Back to the story. Julio Torres, who was born in California in 1955. He had 14 siblings.
Dude, you know what really bugged me about it? Everything that I watched and all the interviews that I saw, everyone pronounced his name Julio.
Yeah.
Did that not bug the shit out of you? Is that maybe that's how he pronounced it? But I mean,
maybe.
Why would Why would your first name be Jose?
Also, how many of them were like, how much of what you studied was like British or something like that? Or what was the origin of it? Because a lot of these true crime docs are like, they seem like they originate from Britain. They always have that British accent, and like, I don't think it do as well with Spanish names.
Well, there was interviews with his wife, and then there was interviews with her mother, and they still called him Julio.
Maybe it is Julio. Maybe we're the ones that are wrong. Maybe we should just call him Julio since everyone else is. I don't know.
Yeah, everybody calls him Julio, which is weird, right. Especially when your first name is actually Jose, because you know it ain't Jose. I mean,
yeah.
Now I'm even more conflicted. I didn't know his first name was Jose, so it's Jose.
Well, he went by Julio.
Come on,
we'll go with Julio because one of the study sources I used was Case File, and he's from Australia, I believe, and I just figured, he's Australian. He doesn't understand that Julio is Julio, not Julio.
No, everybody said Julio.
I guess everyone's calling him Julio. So
yeah. Julio it is.
Anyways, Julio was born in Baja, California, had 14 siblings, and moved to Canby, Oregon in 1961 when he was 6 years old. Moved, obviously, with his family and his 14 siblings.
Right, not on his own.
Not on his own. Maybe his parents were so busy with all the siblings that he's just like, the stick with the bag over his shoulder, and I'm out here.
Julio grew up fast.
Yeah. Julio seemed to love nature. He, in his late teens, early 20s, he worked for Arneson's Nursery in Canby, Oregon.
Okay.
And one of his favorite things to do was fish, and that plays a big role in this case. At some point when he was 20 years old, he met a 15-year-old girl named Candra Tim, their relationship would get serious, and serious enough that it would scare Candra's father enough to thinking this is going to get physical. We're very deeply religious, and I don't want you guys having any sex before marriage. So basically, he kind of pushed them. Yeah, he pushed them to get married within a year, and they would get married on July 22nd, 1975, making Candra Tim Candra Torres. And as we mentioned, him 20, her 15. Mm-hmm. Kind of gross. now.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, by today's standards, I think people grew up a lot quicker back then. We talk about that all the time.
Right.
Right. In the 70s, 15-year-olds were a lot more mature than 15-year-olds in 2022.
Right.
Still.
Yeah. True, but still. It's like 5 years. Like if you get married at 25 and 20, not so big, but 20 and 15,
5 years in that teenage window is such a drastic difference.
It's crucial.
Like, the thought of a 15-year-old dating a 10-year-old would disgust everyone. That's still 5 years. It's just.
That's a great point.
But yet 20 and 25, you're now both mature. It's different.
Right.
So, anyways, it was a different time.
Yep. Different time.
And they seem to fit each other well. And proof is in the pudding when a year later they were ready to celebrate their anniversary, and it seemed like they had a great marriage going on, and it was fine.
Absolutely.
So the newlyweds settled into a Canby apartment with their collie Rusty, which was Candra's dog since childhood. It's an older dog, and they kept the dog and had an apartment together. And we're living a very modest life. They didn't have, hardly 2 pennies to rub together, but they seemed happy. And a year later, in July of 1976, Julio and Candra wanted to take a trip somewhere to celebrate their first anniversary, but they had very little money, as I mentioned. And so what do you do when you have almost no money? There's always wilderness out there for you, and it doesn't charge you to be there most of the time. So they decided to go on a camping excursion in the great Oregonian outdoors. And, of course, they would take along their dog, Rusty.
Of course.
Get him out, stretch them old legs on that trip. And as I mentioned, Julio loved to fish. So this is another, this is one of his passions. And he thought he wanted to share it with Candra, his wife.
Right.
And so they drove into to the Mount Hood National Forest to camp and do some fishing on the Clackamas River. And so they'd been there for a day or two by Friday, July 23rd. And by then they'd become slightly desperate. They had no success fishing. The area they were in, Julio didn't know very well, and he was having no success fishing. And on that evening of Friday, July 23rd, they were also running low on gas. They had, went into the woods with a full tank of gas, but they've driven around a lot, and now they were getting low. They only had $20 left to their name for emergencies, and but they weren't ready. I mean, the weekend was just starting. They still wanted to, have a good time and catch some fish and eat them out there potentially.
Right. They were really trying to rough it out here on this little excursion. Yeah, they didn't bring a lot of food.
And failing and becoming desperate.
Yeah, right.
And so that evening they were near the North Fork Dam, and Julio spotted a man standing on a dock near the dam alone. Julio approached him asking for advice on fishing in the area. This man was driving an old red GMC pickup, and as it turned out, his name was Tom Brown. He was 29 years old. So a bit older than the two of them, quite a bit older than Candra.
Right.
And it was just Julio that approached him initially. And Tom had mentioned that he had been in the woods doing some logging. He was a logger. And he had mentioned that earlier that day, while in the woods, he had witnessed a fish dump into a river nearby. So I guess wildlife management or whatever had come out and dumped a truckload of fish into a river a little further into the woods. And he said, "That's where I'm headed."
Okay.
And so, this is exciting for Julio, who wants to have some success fishing and actually share with his young wife his passion.
It's hard to
not
sell.
Just get skunked.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's hard to sell fishing to somebody when you don't catch anything, It's like, are we fishing or are we sitting on a bank,
Right.
It's like, for someone who is somebody who was wanting to do it more in his relationship, he was like, we got to have some success out here.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Trying to sell this right now. It's not working out.
So Julio was unsure about taking his car further into the woods with only a half tank of gas. However, Tom reassured him that if he ran out of gas or got stuck, he'd help him get back. He had his pickup with plenty of gas in it.
Right, of course.
And so
Good
they
Samaritan.
followed along. They followed Tom and his pickup further up into the woods to a place just past Bagby Hot Springs Road. Quite a drive from where they were. And now they're really low on gas.
Right.
And there was almost no people around. I think they saw one person driving past them as they went up in there. And as the sun was setting, Tom finally pulled into a camping spot, and the trio set up camp for the night. So they're going to camp with this man they just met.
Mm-hmm. Apparently.
Generally speaking, not the best idea. You meet some random person in the woods, and you start camping with them.
Right.
Especially in a time when you had no technology, or you're just alone in the woods with this guy.
Yeah, following this guy deeper
No
into
means
the
of
woods.
communication.
Where you in areas you are not familiar with.
Yeah.
Yeah, this already gives me the creeps.
Yeah. And so that evening around the campfire, Tom shared a bit of his liquor with the couple to kind of put them at ease. And they set off on a brief evening walk, Tom bringing his deer hunting rifle with him. He took them to a meadow that he knew well where there was usually game, and they observed some deer and even some bear cubs playing. And there's more on that story later.
Yeah.
But any hunting that Tom would be doing would be illegal. It was the summer months, and in Oregon and most states during summer you're not deer hunting. You're not allowed to be rifle hunting in summer.
So you're just poaching.
Yeah. So yeah, if he would have shot anything, it would have been poaching. I think it was a lot more common back in the 60s and 70s in the U.S. to just shoot animals.
Yeah, it was a lot harder to track
and things like that.
A lot harder to track back
exactly.
then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, they didn't shoot anything that evening, and that night they slept in their own vehicles. Obviously, Candra and Julio in their car, and Tom in his truck. And Tom would wake them up early that next morning by banging on the hood of their car and telling them, let's go to the river and try and catch some fish for breakfast.
Right.
And so they set out. I'm sure Julio excited to finally get some action. And so they would hike through an overgrown trail that led to a riverbank, and they would kind of stay a little bit away from each other along the river, fishing and having no success. So still a lost cause as far as fishing goes.
Yeah. That fish dump didn't pay off.
Yeah, maybe the fish got dropped in the river and just kept swimming down. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
It's not like a pond, I don't know how that works river-wise. Like you dump them in, where do they end up? I don't know.
Yeah, no, right. That's a good point.
I have a feeling, if you go right where the fish dump happened and it's a river, you might want to go a little further down.
Yeah, you might want to go a little further down.
Flows. I don't know. It just makes sense to me, gravity-wise. I'm no expert.
Right.
So once back at camp, Tom and Julio decided they would try their hand at hunting instead. They called it hunting, but what we mentioned was actually poaching. It was illegal at that time of the year to go doing it. But nonetheless, the two set off with their rifles, one for each of them, both of them being Tom's rifles. One of them I know was like a .22 Savage. I forget what the other one was.
Okay.
Haven't heard much about hunting deer with a .22 caliber rifle.
I was about to say,
like quite enough. But
you're not going to have a lot of success with that.
I know there's different calibers of .22. There's like magnums and things like that. They're much bigger.
Okay.
They have more gunpowder in them. I actually have a .22 rifle. It takes the larger rounds.
Yeah.
The bullet itself's obviously the same size, but there's it's a bigger shell with more powder in it, more knockdown power.
Okay.
Anyways, 3 days later, we're going to fast forward a little bit for the sake of the story, but we'll get back to, we'll fill in the space, kind of like a Tarantino film here.
Yeah.
So Julio and Tom set off to hunt, and we're going to fast forward to 3 days later. Candra and Tom, no Julio, Candra and Tom walk into the office of the Oregon City Attorney's Office, a guy named James O'Leary. This was on the morning of Tuesday, July 27th, 1976, and they had a tragic story to tell. During Tom and Julio's deer poaching, they said that the two had spotted a deer, and during the process of passing back and forth each other's binoculars and rifles, one of the rifles had gone off, shooting Julio in the head and killing him instantly.
Okay, my first question is, why the hell are you passing back and forth rifles if you both have one? Like, what is it?
Yes,
you want to try mine? Let me try yours. Or you want to
I
try
understand the passing back and forth of binoculars if you only have one set. Passing back and forth rifles doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make any sense at all. That seems like an unnecessary risk right there.
And also for someone who had been around guns as much as Tom Brown it seems had to have been, Julio a little more understanding if it was his own gun that went off and killed himself, or an accident happened to Tom because of Julio. But like Tom, his gun accidentally shooting Julio seems like that's, dude, you've been around guns how long? Like, the rules. You don't ever like barrel swipe someone where you always have barrel control. It's always pointed at the ground or at the sky, and you always have your safety on until you don't put your finger on the trigger until you're ready to shoot something. Until your scope is on the target.
I'm saying, you handed the gun to somebody with your finger on the trigger like an idiot or something. Like,
I will say, some of those old rifles from the 60s and 70s, like I still have a 243 Remington, I believe it is, and that we had to actually replace the trigger mechanism on it because that gun would fire. It would misfire. Like if you had a round in it and you sat it down and just like vibrated it, sometimes the gun would just go off.
Oh shit! Yeah.
Yeah, so it is a thing, but at the same time, that's why you don't ever point a barrel at anyone.
Ever.
And also,
Yeah.
why the fuck are you, like you said, why are you passing the guns back and forth?
Yeah.
It just doesn't add up.
No.
A lot of things didn't add up, as we'll come to find out.
Mm-hmm.
Nonetheless, as far as law enforcement side was, they're getting these two people coming in and telling the same story. Candra was absolutely telling the same story. She was backing up Tom Brown in that her husband was shot by Tom accidentally. This was an accident. And also, the story went that as after Julio is unfortunately killed by being shot in the head accidentally, as Tom rushed back to camp, the Torres' dog, Rusty, had become aggressive over the incident. The gun goes off, Julio's down. The story goes that the dog became aggressive with Tom, and Tom had to shoot the dog in self-defense as well.
Mm-hmm. I don't think the dog would understand what the hell just happened.
Yeah, sometimes when dogs don't know what's going on, when people are wrestling and stuff, they'll get aggressive because they don't know what to do. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, not the most unbelievable thing I've ever heard. It's an old dog.
I believe more so that a dog would get aggressive over people wrestling than I would a gunshot. The gunshot would just be like, the dog's not going to realize what the hell just happened. You would think
it would run off a little bit, right? Like,
yeah.
If anything.
The dog's not seeing that as a threat. That's not how animals fight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That doesn't add up. And it was a collie too. It was not like it was an aggressive breed like a German Shepherd or a Doberman or a Pit Bull or something. It's like, it's a collie, man.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You're going to upset some people. We just got one starred. You're insinuating that some breeds are more aggressive, Michael?
I mean, it's a track record. I have German Shepherds.
I was going to say, you're Mr. German Shepherd.
I have German Shepherds, and I have them for a reason.
You did mention Pit Bull, and there's no more aggressive groups than Pit Bull people, so just watch it. Watch your toes there, mister.
Hey, there's a reason you have them as guard dogs. You feel safer with that Pit Bull.
I have a Pit Mix. She's very sweet.
Listen, if all dogs are the same aggressive, get rid of your Pit Bull and get you a Poodle and see how safe you feel.
Yeah. No doubt. Merry Christmas. Anyways, nonetheless, Candra and Tom are telling the same story. Mm-hmm. She said that she had witnessed both events. She had witnessed the death of Julio, her husband, and she had witnessed the death of her childhood dog, this dog she loved very much and had it for a long time.
Yeah.
And she's telling the story that Tom was not to blame here. He was not at fault. It was just a tragedy. And their story also went that during the 3 days that Tom and Candra were out there, so this happened Saturday, right?
Right.
And now it's Tuesday. So, like, of course, law enforcement's like, what the hell took you so long to come and tell us what happened?
Yeah.
That basically Candra had to talk him into going in and telling law enforcement what had happened. That's what they're saying, is because he had a criminal record, and he was worried about the police trying to blame him for this.
Exactly. Exactly.
And so they told law enforcement that during the 3 days that they were in the woods following the accidents, they had covered Julio and Rusty's bodies with brush, gone further into the woods, getting rid of the rifle and ammunition. Mm-hmm. And as we mentioned, Tom was allegedly scared to come forward about the incident due to his past. He said, quote, "I have a criminal record and I didn't want to face authorities. I was afraid they wouldn't believe me." And he did indeed have an extensive and violent criminal past that maybe the police initially didn't look into enough. They just kind of bought this story at wholesale.
Yeah.
Due to the fact that the person that was one of the victims would have nothing to gain, seemingly, from telling the same story. Why would Candra back up his story as a victim, as someone whose husband was shot and her dog was shot? Why would she back this up? And we'll go into that later. Obviously, there's a reason for it.
Right.
But nonetheless, looking into Tom Brown's history, it was pretty damning. At age 16, he had acquired a gun from a friend and quickly ran a woman off the road with his truck, approaching her, putting the gun to her head, and attempting to rob her.
Jesus.
He didn't actually pull the trigger on her and allowed her to evade on foot, at which point police responded. He then shot at police. Broke into a home, stole a truck, shot a man in the stomach through his kitchen window, just for fun. Just a guy, one of those kind of guys who would just shoot things for fun.
Yikes.
Shot a man through his window for fun, in the stomach. The guy would survive, but how fucking scary is that?
Yeah, that's fucked up.
Following this incident, this is all when he was 16, he was sent to reform school, and upon his release, he entered into a relationship with a woman who had children. When the woman broke up with Tom, he abducted her and her children, driving them up into the mountains, held them captive overnight before returning them, which is eerily similar to what just happened, right?
Very similar. And also,
So it makes you wonder, how much did the police look into his background? Because that's just right there.
I know, right?
Holding a family captive in the woods, far too many coincidences here.
Right. And this family would end up not pressing charges, even the mother. And you can kind of see why, because, he didn't hurt them per se. So I don't know she was probably like, he's going to get a slap on the wrist. He's young. He's going to get back out. And I'm sure he threatened her in the same way. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure he threatened her.
We'll get into all that. We have some stuff to fill in with this story.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm talking about the woman with children.
Oh, yes.
You know what I'm saying? I'm sure he threatened her and was like, yeah, you want to press charges? Go ahead. But when I get out, I'll find you.
100%. That's by her own admission. She said that she didn't report him because she was afraid about retribution.
Yeah.
And rightfully so. I can't even blame her. This is exactly the type of guy who would, if you did press charges, he would bide his time in prison. He says this later about this incident. Mm-hmm. He would bide his time however long it took, and he would come and hunt you down afterwards. Yep. He would have done that.
Yep. Absolutely.
And so I don't blame that woman for not pressing charges against him.
I know.
I probably wouldn't have either.
Seriously. What do you do in that situation?
Yeah. It would later be discovered as well that the red pickup truck that he was currently driving at this time in Oregon had been stolen back in Nebraska, and he had an active warrant in Nebraska for that auto theft. He knew the guy that he stole the truck from. I think the guy employed him, and he stole the truck and drove it to Oregon. And then, you know how it was in the 70s. Back. Yeah, they didn't have like the digital footprint of things.
Right.
So you just take something and go to another state, and you're just going to get away with it pretty much.
Right. It's crazy. As long as nobody
sees it. You think that would have been enough, right? If the police in Oregon, upon this story being told, looking into him, they would have somehow, you would think they would found out that truck he's driving is stolen, right?
I know, right?
And then taken him in for that, and then maybe dug deeper into this story of how this guy and this dog got killed in the woods, but they didn't.
Right. It seems like that would be enough to hold him for long enough to get the story straight, like you say, yeah.
Right. And give Candra some time away from him to get her head clear, which is all it took.
Yes.
To get to the truth.
Yes.
So hearing this story from both of them that matched up perfectly, they even took them into separate rooms and interviewed them separately to see if they could find some inconsistencies in their story. And unfortunately, they could not. Their story was rock solid on both ends. It matched up perfectly. Mm-hmm. Candra was adamant that Julio's death was a tragic accident, and she was grateful even for Tom taking care of her and getting her out of the woods afterwards, because she knew that she would have probably died had she been left up there in the woods alone.
Right.
She was, 16 at this time, didn't know anything about survival in the woods, and she,
very impressionable, very afraid.
Yeah. Later that evening, Tom escorted police to the trio's former camp. The rifles and the bodies of Julio Torres and Rusty were found. And over the coming days, Tom remained forthcoming in the police investigation. He even willingly took and passed a polygraph test. So we know how those things can be. Mm-hmm. If you are a sociopath that truly believes your lies, or at least can convince your own body that you believe the lies, you're that stone cold about the things you do, it doesn't emotionally affect you, you can pass a polygraph. And
you've also had days to come to terms with this and to go over it and over it. 2 to 3 days, they were out there together going over what happened. And it's a
lifelong criminal, a guy who just doesn't have any remorse for these evil things he does. He doesn't feel bad about it.
He started being a criminal at 16. He's almost 30 years old. I mean, almost half his life.
Yeah.
So who knows what he did in that gap there? You know what I'm saying?
Who knows what he did before 16?
That's
Probably
true.
was doing some bad shit before that incident.
That's true.
So police had no choice in the matter. There's nothing they could do about it. With everything lining up with their stories of what Candra and Tom had told them, they would officially rule Julio's death accidental. And Candra, after this, obviously wouldn't move back into that apartment that she shared with Julio.
No.
She moved in with her parents following that tragic weekend. Her mother, Lola, though, could sense that something was not right. Of course, a parent knows their children best, a mother especially. She could sense that something was not right about her daughter, aside from the grief, of course, that she was going to feel, even if it was an accident. She could tell that that something was not right. When her daughter would recant this story, she could tell that it was rehearsed. She said it was like hearing someone read on the radio or something. It was like there was no emotion behind it. It sounded rehearsed and scripted.
Yeah.
However, she held firm on her story for now, at least until she returned to the apartment that she had shared with Julio. So, of course, she needed to go back to the apartment to get some things. Her parents accompanied her back to the apartment, and apparently as soon as she walked into the apartment, she just broke down, and she started crying and telling her parents, "Don't hate me." And it all came out, and they would get to the real story. And it's interesting. She also mentioned that days before the trip, her and Julio had a bad feeling about this trip. She said that she had some nightmares about this trip, that something was going to go wrong. And when she shared her feelings to Julio, expecting him to kind of calm her down and say, "Oh, you're being silly. We're just going camping," he apparently had some same feelings. He told her that he was feeling, kind of uneasy and anxious about this trip as well. Right. Nonetheless, they went forward with it.
That could have been because of their financial state too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, they were kind of tight on cash, and when you don't have that cushion, maybe they rationalized that was the form of their anxiety, and they're like, "No, we'll be fine. We'll catch fish to eat. We're not going to get lost."
And you know how life can be. Sometimes you lay in bed worrying about things that could happen the next day, and then the next day comes, it's bright and sunny, and you're driving to work or whatever, and you're like, "What was I worried about? It's a beautiful day." Like, that's kind of how it was. They got to the woods, and they were like, "Well, this is beautiful. What were we so worried about?"
Exactly. And that was then too. Like, now I think it's amplified even more, all the information that people intake. It's like, we can absolutely understand why someone would have anxiety over something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, you've shared some crazy camping stories on this show, and I think most people have had a suspicious camping story where you feel like, I think I dodged a bullet there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in this case, it didn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely had a few of those.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, check out Just the Banner for those. I think we've talked about that in an episode or two.
Yeah, you shared some crazy ones for sure.
Yeah. So she also recalled how when they first encountered this Tom Brown, he didn't seem very receptive to Julio. When Julio first approached, Candra was still, I think, in the car, and Tom was kind of blowing him off. Didn't have the time of day to talk about fishing or anything with him until Candra walked up. And then all of a sudden his demeanor changed. He flashed her a wide smile, which she said made her uneasy, the way that he looked at her as though she was like a piece of meat.
Mm-hmm.
Also, when they first got to camp, when they'd followed him up in there and they pulled up in the camp, he pulled out this milk jug that he had a dead bird inside of that he had shot for fun. That kind of turned her off as well, and she even mentioned, "I don't like killing anything that I'm not going to eat."
Right.
And then he bragged, "Well, I'm going to eat it later," or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
She also didn't like the way that he loosely carried around his rifle. She had noticed, even as someone who wasn't really that in tune with guns, that he had multiple times already kind of flashed Julio with the barrel in camp.
Oh, yeah.
Was very loosey-goosey with the barrel. Some foreshadowing there.
I can't stand
and
that.
A comment that he had made her very uneasy prior to the accidents, quote unquote. He said about her dog, Rusty, quote, "There are only two things wrong with him. He's alive and walking."
Jesus.
Right there. I'd be like,
this guy
second I get away from Tom with Julio, I'd be like, "Let's get the fuck out of here. Get in the car."
Seriously. Yeah.
Like, take one of his rifles if we have to defend ourselves, because this motherfucker is bad.
I mean, God.
Like, who says that?
Seriously. About a dog. A domesticated
you ever encounter those people?
Old dog, too.
You ever encounter those people that just hate animals? And you're just like, I can't be friends with you.
I don't understand. Yeah, like, hate
Your
them.
dog comes up to them and they're like, "Get that fucking thing away from me. I don't like dogs." Like, I've come across a few of those people, man, and they just make me uneasy.
Especially if your dog
What the hell's wrong with you?
Especially if your dog is well mannered, like it's just sitting there waiting to be petted or something.
It's one thing if it jumps up on their lap and licking their face. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't want a dog jumping on me when I first meet a dog either. I don't want it jumping up on my chest or up on my lap.
But you know what I mean? There's those people that have disdain for animals.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. That's crazy.
Red flag.
Mm-hmm.
And so as she broke down and was telling her parents a lot of this stuff, she also began to realize that she couldn't actually picture the moment that Julio was shot, even though she had told police and her parents that she had witnessed it. Now she was realizing she couldn't actually picture that. She had definitely heard the gunshot, and she had definitely seen Julio's head covered in blood, but she didn't think she had actually witnessed the shot. And at this point, her mother said, quote, "My God, Candra, don't you realize that man murdered your husband?" And over the coming days,
she was struggling with it.
Yes. Her mind was not allowing her. The trauma was not allowing her to see the truth of what had happened.
She was
Over the coming
rationalizing.
days, the memory flooded back to her. These memories became unlocked from her memory. On August 2nd, 6 days after she had gone with Tom to the sheriff's office, Candra returned, this time with her parents. And she said, quote, "It wasn't an accident." And we get to the heart of the real story. And that is that the morning of Saturday, July 24th, they had gotten up early to go hunt for deer, that being Tom and Julio.
Yes.
Candra had not gone with them. She had not witnessed what had happened. She had stayed back at the camp with Rusty.
Right.
This, I'm sure, was all a part of Tom's plan. He wanted her back at camp so she couldn't see what was going to happen because he was definitely planning to kill her husband.
Absolutely.
A bit later, she heard the gunshot. Moments later, she saw Tom walking back to camp. Of course, she's sitting in camp anxious. She hears that gunshot. She's hoping to God that was a deer that they shot. But she has an uneasy feeling about Tom. She didn't like that they went off together. And then seeing just Tom walk back to camp, I'm sure gave her chills.
Oh, definitely.
And he said, quote, "We got us a deer." And he told her that Julio was in the field dressing or gutting the animal, which made no sense to Candra because Julio had no experience hunting. He wouldn't know the first thing about gutting a deer. Didn't make any sense to her. So she, at that point, hurried in the direction of which Tom had come, where they had allegedly shot this deer, at which point behind her she heard another gunshot and turned around to find that her dog Rusty was the next target. And he was basically laying there twitching. And at which point she went and picked up Rusty because he appeared to still be alive and asked Tom if she could help him. And Tom said, "He's just twitching. He's going to die. I don't shoot things and not kill them." Or he said some evil shit like that.
Oh, God, dude.
Yeah. And these things were probably so unreal to her at the time that her mind was not even allowing her to accept them, you know?
Yeah,
and
exactly. Especially at 16 years old.
Yeah. And these are the things he starts to tell her after killing her dog and her husband. He says, "You're not allowed to cry. I'm going to tell you a story." He told her that his name wasn't Tom, it was Kent. He wasn't a logger. He was a hitman for an organized crime group. Just completely spewing lies at her. He said he was on the run from the mobsters that he worked for because he had killed one too many people. He told her that he had killed Julio because he needed a female companion strong enough to live off the land with him. And she's telling him, "I don't know how to live off the land. You picked the wrong one." And after telling her these lies, he said, "Now you can cry." Of course, at which point she broke down. But what was she going to do at this point? She knew she wasn't going to make it out of there alive unless her survival instincts, I'm sure, are kicking in. And she's thinking, I have to play along with this son of a bitch for as long as it takes.
Right. Yeah, because, I mean, at the very least, to get out of the woods, that's your only chance.
Yeah.
She doesn't even she doesn't even know how to get help at this point. No. She can't.
Yeah. Tom would give her camouflage clothing to wear and forced her to hike into the mountains with him. He had no plans of going back to society with her.
No.
And, of course, during their hike, they would stop off and he would repeatedly rape her because, of course, that's what this whole thing was about. There was no other motive here. He was a fucking despicable creep. He would rape her multiple times, and then he would begin to open up about what an evil shithead he was. He would start talking about how he was a big fan of Adolf Hitler and how he hated his family.
Jesus.
However, as the hours wore on, they would begin to talk about more benign things. They would discuss a variety of topics, and Candra began to successfully humanize herself to Tom. One of the things that we brought up in our How to Survive an Encounter with a Serial Killer, is to humanize yourself, to make yourself less indispensable, I guess, or more indispensable.
Right. And to also express, like, you know, even as fake as it has to be, a care and consideration and understanding and empathy for this psychopath. However, you have to do it. And for her to do that at 16, I think she had to, like, fully buy in to the lie.
And I don't know how much of that was conscious or how much of it was a defense mechanism built into her DNA, you know, that we have inside of us. We'll talk a little bit about Stockholm Syndrome. Obviously, that plays a big role in this case. And thankfully, it was a new phenomenon to law enforcement and society that it had just kind of hit the public's eyes.
So it was at the forefront of their minds.
Yes, because in 1974, a big event happened in Stockholm that made people aware of this defense mechanism that we have inside of us. Nonetheless, on the second morning after Julio's murder, while in the woods with Tom awoke with a bad cough and became convinced that he had pneumonia and that he was going to die in the woods, and began writing letters to his friends saying he was going to be dead. And she began to become concerned that she would never make it out of the woods if he died, because he was her lifeline to getting out of there.
Right.
As much as he was obviously had killed her husband and her dog, she still needed him to get out of the woods.
Absolutely.
And she began to convince him that she was with him, and he began to see this and change his story, saying that Julio's death was an accident.
Yeah.
Candra, afraid that Tom would die and leave her alone in the mountains, said that she would confirm his story to police. She even says in her own words, I began to actually believe that he really did accidentally kill my husband. I didn't actually think, I believed him, is what she was saying.
And I think she also rationalized it in a way of, regardless of what he did, he's my only way out, but also coming from a religious background, because a fun fact, those few nights that they spent together by the fire, she would read him the Bible, out loud. Right. And why do you think she was doing that? I think she was doing that for herself as much as for him, you know, trying to show him there's a way. It's even though you've done these horrible things, God can find a way to forgive you, and I can find a way to forgive you.
Great point. Because I think there was even a quote she said where she was reading the Bible aloud to kind of make herself feel better. And he said to her something about God would never forgive me. And she said, God forgives everyone.
Exactly.
Which was a brilliant thing for her to say. That's what he needed to hear.
Yep. And he needed to hear that a believer would also forgive him too. So, she got to him a little bit in the fact that well, maybe she could be with me. Maybe she will take my side, which, she did initially with the police even.
So he begins to reiterate that he had accidentally killed Julio, and he was afraid of no one believing him. He would go to prison, and she believed him. And she tells him, we can go to police and I'll back your story up and you won't get in trouble. And so he goes with it. He takes her back down into society. They walk in first into that attorney's office, which we mentioned earlier, because they wanted backup as far as from the law. They didn't want to go straight to the sheriff's office. They wanted an attorney as well. Smart on their part. And then they went with the attorney to the sheriff's office, and they both passed polygraph tests saying that this was an accident. Candra, I'm sure it was easier for her to pass because she didn't witness the incident, and she's still in shock and all of that and believes this is what happened. But he as well passed. And thankfully, police were at this point aware of a newly discovered phenomena called Stockholm Syndrome, which I'm sure you've heard of. Here's the definition of it. It's a psychological response to being held captive. People with Stockholm Syndrome form a psychological connection with their captors and begin sympathizing with them. In addition to the original kidnapper-hostage situation, Stockholm Syndrome now includes other types of trauma in which there's a bond between the abuser and the person being abused. Many medical professionals consider the victim's positive feelings toward their abuser a psychological response, a coping mechanism that they use to survive the days, weeks, or even years of trauma or abuse. And it got its name from a 1973 bank robbery incident that happened in Stockholm, Sweden, which during a 6-day standoff with police, many of the captive bank employees became sympathetic toward the bank robbers. So this was 3 years prior to this event in Oregon.
Right.
And so fresh in the minds of anyone working in the medical field or law enforcement or anything like that. It was a big story. And after the employees at the bank were set free, some bank employees refused to testify against the bank robbers in court and even raised money for their defense. A criminologist and psychiatrist investigating the event developed the term Stockholm Syndrome to describe the affinity some bank employees showed toward their bank robbers. Quote, I had nobody with me but a murderer. This is now Candra talking about how she got duped and how, what her mindset was during this time.
Right.
She said, quote, I had nobody with me but a murderer. Do I really want to believe he is a murderer? Because believing that is terrifying. Do I really want to think that my husband died so that someone could rape and kidnap me? For me, denial was the best way to survive.
Yep.
100% can see how that, I mean, she didn't want to believe that had happened because that's just, what does that spell for her? Doom. That means you're fucked.
And believing that and showing that you believe that to him just emboldens him even more. It makes him, it puts this sociopath, Tom, at ease. He feels like everything is okay. He feels like, oh, well, I guess she does believe me. My lies are working.
Whereas if she fights it and she says, no, you killed my husband, what's he more likely to do at this point?
Do?
Well, she can't survive because then she's going to testify against him.
Precisely.
Yeah. So the police, they were kind of like, they wanted to believe her at this point because they looked into his background. They knew that this story was kind of unbelievable. Mm-hmm. But they had to go with it because that's what she was saying at the time initially. But now she's coming back and saying this wasn't an accident. This is what happened. Mm-hmm. And they begin to dig more into the forensic, what they could do with forensics back then, which, was obviously not as much as they could do now, but they could still look at the bullet path and things along those lines.
Yep.
And things like gunshot residue. Which an autopsy had found that there was none of on Tom's face. And so they started to do tests on how far away a gun would have to be, a gun like what he had that was used in the death. How far away would the barrel have to be from the victim's face to have residue left? And they found that the gun would have to be fired from 36 inches away or more for there to not be any gunshot residue left.
And it's kind of hard to hand.
3 feet.
It's kind of hard to hand someone a rifle when there's 3 feet in between you.
Exactly. It just doesn't match up with the story. They were supposedly sitting right next to each other, right? Passing back and forth binocular and rifle and all this.
And that's 3 feet from the target and the end of the barrel.
Yep. Not from the stock of the gun, but from the barrel.
Exactly.
So this coupled with the fact that the entry and exit wounds found on Julio were in a horizontal fashion, which didn't match up with Tom's story of an accidental misfire.
Right.
I'm guessing the accidental misfire would have been more of an upward angled trajectory,
That's
not
what I would think.
Straight across.
If you're handing someone a gun, you know what I'm saying? And if you have the barrel up, which I don't know why you would do that, don't do that, but if you're handing someone like that, that's most likely, that's what I was thinking. The trajectory would be here, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Coming in through the bottom of the skull.
Yep. And so police, with this newly found information about the trajectory the bullet took, the fact that the gunshot residue didn't match up, and now Candra's story, believed they had enough. And they took what they had to a grand jury. And in December of 1976, the grand jury decided that Julio had in fact been murdered. And an indictment was handed down, charging Tom Brown with murder among other charges. I think auto theft and things like that in there.
Right.
And of course, he was on the lam, as he often was, somewhere in the woods, and they were not able to locate him. Nonetheless, a couple months later, he had gotten wind that he was, law enforcement was hunting for him, and he went ahead and walked into the sheriff's office and turned himself in, saying, "I heard that you guys are looking for me for something, and I'd like to clear my name." Not going to happen, bud.
No, absolutely not. I can't believe that. They may have not found him out there.
Right. Yep.
It's kind of crazy that he did this.
Especially if he had fled, during this time, he'd fled to the other side of the country or something. They may have never, for 20 plus years, located him.
Right. In the 70s too.
Yep. But this is part of his arrogance. We see this with serial killers and guys like him. We see his mindset from jail when he begins talking to someone he trusted in jail. We see why he turned himself in, because he thought he could get away with it still.
Oh, yeah.
Because he didn't believe Candra was going to testify. He thought he could talk his way out of this.
Yep.
Meanwhile, Candra was busy writing an 18-page summary of what had happened on that fateful weekend. And Tom was likely fucked either way when he got to trial, but he sure didn't do himself any favors from behind bars in jail awaiting trial. It just so happened that while he was in his jailhouse, while he was in jail awaiting trial, his cellmate, which just seems like too good of a coincidence. It almost seems like police planted this guy that had a background with Tom in there to get him to start talking. Because he happened to be bunked up in jail with a guy that he went to reform school with, and a fellow criminal, a guy by the name of Wendell, an old friend. And Tom trusted this guy enough to begin talking and confided in Wendell about how he had deliberately shot Julio in the face. It wasn't an accident. He had manipulated Candra into believing it was an accident, and he said that she wouldn't be strong enough to testify against him in court, and he was going to walk out of this unscathed. He even said that when he was acquitted, he would kill the case's prosecutors and turn his sights to Candra next.
Yeah, he probably should have left that part out for sure.
That's just even more fuel for the fire for the prosecutors to really fuck you.
Yeah, this guy was brazen, wasn't he? He was really under his own little spell there, because why the hell would you think another criminal would keep your secrets, especially one that has something to gain?
Yeah. His old buddy Wendell there, of course, went right to the police, to the prosecutors, telling them everything Tom had said, and even agreed to testify against him in exchange for a reduced sentence and a prison transfer. So
why not?
Yeah, man. Hey. Absolutely.
Yeah, prisoners are constantly looking for something that they can play in their favor. They need a chip, and man, this one just fell right in his lap.
Yep.
Right in his
This
lap.
is scary, though. Amazingly, 2 days before his trial was set to begin, Tom managed to scrounge enough money together to make bail and was released from jail. And with the mindset like he has, that was very scary for Candra, for anyone involved in this case. And I believe prosecutors and the sheriff's office actually put her up in a hotel under surveillance to, protection.
Yeah.
Until the trial began.
You would have to.
And unlike what old Tom believed, he didn't believe Candra was strong enough to testify against him. She did, in fact, testify against him at length over the course of 2 days in the trial.
Yeah.
Sat up there, pointed the finger, and told the jury everything that he had done to her. And he was unsurprisingly found guilty and charged to life in prison. And as of now, he remains in an Oregon State prison and has been in there for the past 47 years.
Mm-hmm.
However, he is scheduled to be released next year, in August of 2023. He's currently 75 years old.
Man,
and let's hope that his, release gets denied or he dies before that.
Yeah, you can't let him out.
Because he just, dude, I mean, the things he's talked about hunting people down after serving his time or whatever, I don't know how much of that has changed over the years. Obviously, he may be a different person after 50 fucking years, but
I don't know. It's like, that's one way to look at it, but you could also look at it as the fact that he's 75 years old. He has nothing to lose now. His whole life has been taken from him. It's like, you don't never know, man. People are spiteful. They might come out and be like, oh, I'm going to go out and, get back at all the people that I feel have wronged me.
Yeah, and meanwhile, Candra has done countless interviews. She was interviewed on the Forensic Files episode. Yeah. She's been interviewed on Oxygen Network and all these different places.
Yes, and she's been brave. She hasn't been shy about it. She doesn't have her face blurred out or her voice changed or anything. Like, she's right there telling her story. Yep. And
so let's hope he doesn't get out.
Seriously.
And he dies behind bars.
Yeah, I don't see how he can be let out, man, for that kind of a cold-blooded murder like that. And kidnapping. He has another kidnapping on his record. He has other attempted murders. Like, for instance, I know there was when he was a minor, but still.
Yep.
Sometimes that speaks even more volumes,
Well, he didn't change from the time he was 16, doing those, armed robberies and things like that, shooting a man through his window, to the time he was 30. Didn't change at all.
Yeah, it's not going to get any better. It's not going to get better. Forget it. Yeah. If by 30 you ain't grown up, man, that doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. But part of growing up is choosing the right deodorant. Am I right?
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And what does look good in your pits is some Oh My Guy.
It does.
It also smells good.
It does. Oh My Guy is an innovative, all-natural deodorant, fragrance, and beard oil company specializing in paraben and aluminum-free products. Their innovative line of deodorants inhibit the growth of odor-causing bacteria while still maintaining effectiveness. And at Oh My Guy, they use only all-natural, paraben, and aluminum-free organic ingredients, guys. There's no aluminum, none of those other things that you can't pronounce in your deodorant. It's all natural. And there's tons of scents to choose from vanilla, cherry almond, sandalwood, lavender, lemongrass, Egyptian musk, coconut, dreamsicle. There's sweet pea, sailor, barbershop, and so much more, guys, including our own scent for true crime guys called True Crime Pine. If you guys don't know where to start, that is a great unisex scent to start. Guys, if you're growing your beard out for the winter, check out the beard oil too. You can get it in any of these amazing scents. I really love Barbershop. Barbershop is a great beard oil scent, right? It's just it's fresh from the barbershop.
It's just fresh and clean.
Yes, it's so nice. And it goes around. And if you want something more fall related, more winter related, whatever, Fireside is another great one, guys. But because you're True Crime Guys listeners, you can use the word Creeper for 15% off your order. That's Creeper, CREEPER, for 15% off at shop_ohmygaia on Instagram or ohmygaia.com. That's OHMYGAIA.com, guys. Again, you won't regret it, and there is links right below here with the code word right below the description of this episode if you forget.
Also links to our other weekly sponsor below. That is Tonic CBD. Yep. It's true, not all CBD products are created equal. From how it's grown and processed to how it's formulated and delivered into your body, every step of the process that goes into making the product affects your ultimate experience with it. That's why Tonic's products really stand out. Founder Brittany Carbone created her original formulas using CBD, adaptogens, herbs, and superfoods back in 2017 and has been working to deliver the most effective, intentional, and sustainable products possible ever since. Tonic Craft cultivates their own hemp on their certified organic farm in upstate New York. That hemp travels only 30 minutes to their state-of-the-art manufacturing and distribution facility where it's turned into a finished product and sent to you, ensuring only the highest quality vibes at every stage of the process. Their farm-to-bottle CBD plus botanical blends are uniquely formulated to provide targeted support where you need it most. Each and every high-quality ingredient is thoughtfully selected for its ability to support and enhance the benefits of CBD, resulting in a more effective, well-rounded, and consistent wellness solution for your mind and for your body. They have a bunch of different blends. Chill is one of my favorites for anxiety. It has ashwagandha, lemon balm, and passion flower. It's nice right before bed, just soothes you into sleep.
Yep.
They also use black seed oil, which is a powerful antioxidant.
Great for your
so they
immune
blend
system.
in these different superfoods into the CBD, and the CBD itself is so high quality. It's different than the crap you're going to get at a smoke shop or a gas station. This is high quality stuff.
Right, because the product is grown just 30 minutes from where it's manufactured.
Yeah.
Like in upstate New York. Like you can't beat that, guys. It's not like it's being sat on the shelf forever or the product is being ordered and then they're turning it in. No, they're growing and producing their own CBD
Go on their
products.
Instagram and check out. They show a lot of the processing, and
Yes.
some of the trimming of the buds they do. All of that stuff it's legit.
At
Like the
Tonic
owner Brittany
CBD.
is sitting there trimming up these buds herself, and everything is like, the highest quality, legit.
Absolutely.
We don't even get paid any money. We just literally get paid in product. That's how much we love this
That's it. We
company
love
as well
this
as Oh My
product.
Guy.
Yep.
Yeah. So with values rooted in integrity, quality, and sustainability, Tonic is committed to creating a plant-based wellness product that is good for you, good for the people, and good for the planet. Visit tonicvibes.com to learn more and use code word CREEPER for 20% off your order. That's tonicvibes.com, code word CREEPER for 20% off.
Right on. Also check out Patreon.
Check out our Patreon.
Yes, guys. Patreon.com/truecrime-guys. For $2 a month, you get access to the 50 Vault episodes that you probably don't see on your feed, our very first 50 episodes, as well as every Patreon exclusive that we have ever done. I think we're approaching number 70. So right off the bat, if you've never been on Patreon, that's 120 episodes that you've never seen for just $2 a month, guys. And after you run through those, you can upgrade to the $5 tier and get access to literally everything we create. All of our Sandu content, from Sandu stories to strange shorts, every week.
Hear my
with
creepy camping
myself and
stories
Andy.
on Just the Banner.
Just the Banter, which we'll be back with Just the Banter. It's the first of the year, guys. We just took a little hiatus here throughout the holidays, give ourselves a little breather. But Just the Banter will be back at the first of the year, but there's already 90 plus episodes on there. You can get to know me and Lauren a lot better. But yeah, everything on there for just $5 a month, guys, and that's a bargain. I mean, hundreds of audio files, episodes of Higher Thoughts, 5-minute murder show, which Lauren,
if you have
does with
a
video.
spouse or a boyfriend or girlfriend that loves the show, and isn't a patron member, that'd be a great stocking stuffer or present.
Yes,
to give them
absolutely.
a year's worth of Patreon content, because you can pay up front and save 10% doing that, 10 or 15. So a year on the $5 tier is $54. I think you save a few bucks doing that, and then on the $2 tier it's $21, and you're done.
Yep.
For the year.
For the whole year.
Yeah, you don't have that, your card getting hit every month for the subscription fee. So
that's right. And also Patreon just updated something to where you actually get charged. I think I spoke about this on another episode. You actually get charged on the day that you sign up now. So before, if you signed up at the end of a month, so let's say you signed up December 30th, you would pay for that full month of December, and then on January 1st, you would have to pay for another full month, just 2 days later. It's not like that anymore. Now you get charged on the day you sign up. So
which is nice.
It is nice. It's much better.
You're typically going to sign up at a time that's financially convenient for you, right? Where you have a little more expendable income. That's usually, probably around when you get paid or whatever.
Right.
That makes sense to do it that way, as opposed to the first of the month where you're getting hit for everything at once and you're just low on cash.
Enough stuff comes out at the first of the month. A lot of people's rents do it the first of the month. It gets kind of dicey. So now when you sign up, that's when you pay, guys. So all right. Anything else?
That about does it.
That's it.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Keep creeping. We'll see you next week.
Keep creeping,
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas.
And happy holidays.
And a happy New Year and a happy holiday, whatever.
Yeah,
we'll see you before the New Year.
See you guys.
All right. See you.
True crime guys, in the desert we like a mirage. It's okay if you clicked on us cause you thought we was True Crime Garage. Now we ain't mad at you, sit down, let us talk at you. I'm talking to the creeper army, we out here making murder, get murder. True crime guys, in the desert we like a mirage. It's okay if you clicked on us cause you thought we was True Crime Garage. Now we ain't mad at you, sit down, let us talk at you. I'm talking to the creeper army, we out here making murder charming.
minds of true crime guys. Come.
TCG Weekly. If you've enjoyed this episode, please feel free to check out all the other programs on the TCG network. Every Wednesday, a new episode of True Crime Guys proper, Strange and Unexplained on Mondays, and Full House Fantasy Football on Fridays to start your weekend. And if those aren't enough, head on over to our Patreon account, where you can have access to hundreds of hours of content, including older episodes and other Patreon exclusives like Strange Shorts, Sandu Stories, Higher Thoughts, and the 5-Minute Murder Show. But until next time, guys, keep creeping. Hey, how do you shut this thing off? Over?